Hey, what's going on, everyone? So this will be my short lecture on the important things that I want you to know from Chapter 1. I decided I'm not going to go over everything, but I'm not going to test you on everything either. So I'm going to focus heavily on Texas political culture because it relates seamlessly to the political compass that you guys are going to be doing. Cool. So let's start. Let's talk about what political culture is. Political culture is defined as the broadly shared values, beliefs, and attitudes about how the government should function and how politics should operate. So what this really means is like the mental kind of parameters we set around what government is. Um, we have these underlying assumptions about what its role is, and if you were to try to boil that down and figure out what those things are, what you would probably come up with are the belief in liberty, the belief in equality, and the belief in democracy as necessary and required for any good governance to occur. Okay, so let's talk about liberty first. Liberty means freedom. Um, Libertarians are all about individual freedoms. It's in the name, liberty, freedom. Just fuse those together in your mind. But liberty means, in this context, it means freedom from coercion by the government. And it means like freedoms, things that cannot be taken away from you, like your right to free speech, or your Second Amendment right, things like that. But it also means economic freedom. So economic freedom would be the ability to go make a profit and be successful in the free market. It's about being able to succeed and pursue excellence, essentially. So you are free to go be successful. And, in turn, the markets should be free to allow that. So when somebody says liberty, they are probably talking about both, but you may want to just be aware that there are multiple different facets of liberty, and in our context, we're talking about freedom from the government or freedoms retained by the people, through rights given to you by being a human. And then liberty in the market sense, liberty to economic freedom to go be successful, right? So equality means equality under the law. Everyone is treated the same under the law. Everyone has the same rights, etc. Is that always the case? No, but at least legally, everyone does have the same rights under the law. Now, equality also can deal with economic practices as well. So equality, here we need to make a distinction. So equality generally means equality of opportunity. Everybody gets the same starting point. What happens after that is up to the individual person because they have the liberty, they have the freedom, So that's equality of opportunity. There's also some would prefer equality of outcome. So equality of outcome would mean, if natural outcome is this, we scrunch it a little bit, or a lot, depending on where you fall. But this would generally be called equity. So if you're an egalitarian or if you favor equity, you are probably going to be more in favor of making sure that there are equal outcomes. Whereas if you are more equality of opportunity or traditional equality, you would say everybody should have the same starting point, and then what happens after that is up to them, right? So again, we have to make some distinctions about what equality is. Equality means different things to different people, for sure. Now, democracy is the third one. Democracy means that people ought to rule themselves. Autocracy means one ruler. Oligarchy, that one doesn't have the same suffix, but it means ruled by a few people. A democracy means ruled by many people. The demos are the people. Now, we in America, in the USA, we are more of a republic than a democracy, or we are a democracy for sure. But as far as the definition of democracy goes, we are less of a direct democracy and more of a representative democracy, or a republic, where we elect representatives to go to the Capitol, to go to Washington, and go make legislation, go legislate for the people. And they are accountable to us, and that's why you can vote them out of office if you don't like them. But you cast your vote for someone, and they go to the Capitol, and they make the laws. So it's still a democracy, but there's a step in between, right? So that is what we have, but that is what democracy ultimately boils down to, is that the people decide, if not what goes on, at least who is doing the goings on, if that makes sense. So again, people can differ on how direct they want their democracy, right? So like the Federalists, remember the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists? The Federalists would say that an indirect democracy is fine because we need, qualified people to go make those decisions, whereas the Anti-Federalists would say, no, we need a more direct democracy. We don't need elites. We don't need distant people that don't know what life is like here. You know what I mean? So people can vary on that spectrum as well, for sure. Texas differs from the federal, from the national level, of course, but Texas, I think, is just a more, Texas has more of some things and less of others, I would say. Specifically, Texas, our political culture is defined as traditionalistic / individualistic. So there's a political scientist name, the first name escapes me, Daniel Alazar? Somebody. It's mentioned in the textbook. He created kind of like a typology for defining political culture across the nation, across states, and he came up with three terms: traditionalistic, individualistic, and moralistic. So Texas is a mix of traditionalistic and individualistic. I'll talk about those in a sec, but let's talk about moralistic since it's the one excluded. Moralistic is like, we have a duty to serve the government. The government exists for a positive purpose, or it has a positive purpose, and it is capable of creating positive outcomes, and therefore people ought to take part in it and push it in the right direction. Traditionalistic and individualistic differ from this because, well, let's talk about individualistic first. Individualistic is, look, I don't think government is like the good guy all the time. I understand that we exist in this system, so I'm going to demand government, or I'm going to use government to protect or to advance what is good for me, and then traditionalistic would be, maybe more status quo, maybe more deferential to like the elites or the gentry, kind of like we let them do their thing. They know what's best. They're just, manning the ship of state. You know what I mean? So that, and they're a little resistant to change. They kind of just want to keep things going the way it is. So Texas would have a traditionalistic and individualistic political culture. I want to read an excerpt from the chapter 1 outline because I think it's kind of hilarious. And also, just so y'all know, this chapter 1 outline is, I believe, it is on Canvas. I'm pretty sure you can see it. I'm not positive, but you ought to check. Just chapter 1 outline. It's basically like if you could take perfect notes, this is what you would have. So I urge you to just read through that, to be honest. But here, let me read you this. Texas political culture is defined as traditionalistic, individualistic, blah, 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 which refers to the belief that government should be dominated by political elites and guided by tradition, as influenced by the culture of the South, combined with the belief that government should limit its role in providing order in society so that citizens can pursue their economic self-interest, as influenced by the culture of the mid-Atlantic states. So this goes back into Alazar's theory of where these beliefs come from, But so the reason why I think that's actually let's take it piece by piece. So this second part is dead on. Government should limit its role in providing order in society so that citizens can pursue their economic self-interest. That's pure individualistic. That's pure liberty. That's pure economic liberty, economic freedom. But. So that clearly points to individualistic, but the traditionalistic part, it doesn't really line up, to be honest, with what is true today. So the textbook says the government, or Texas has the belief that government should be dominated by political elites and guided by tradition, as influenced by the culture of the South. Maybe the South did want that. But I think, to be honest, Trump kind of took a hammer to that whole theory in this case, because if Texas believed that government should be dominated by political elites and guided by tradition, they would have chose Jeb Bush. That's my personal opinion, because they are political elites. And the tradition is to elect a Bush every other election. Clearly I'm joking, but I mean, the point is, I don't think maybe the traditionalistic thing holds all other times, but at least in one instance, I just found this definition just to not line up with reality. Y'all don't have to agree with me on that. I just thought that was interesting. Okay, so moving on, some of the other defining factors of political culture are, we essentially have a one-party state. We're dominated in state politics by conservative Republicans. Now, Texas politics was dominated by conservative Democrats, up until really to the mid-'80s, early '90s. But I mean, the shifts started happening during the Reagan years, but the trend really, or Republicans really became entrenched in Texas, in the last 40 years. But again, Texas politics is changing in such a way that Texas is not expected to be a one-party state forever. For the foreseeable future, it looks like it will be, but in the more distant future, it's not expected that Texas will be a one-party state. So the book also mentions that, but I just thought I would point that out. Here's another, in business dominance as well. So I guess Texas is traditionalistic in the sense that we don't want the government to take care of things. We would rather have it be dealt with in the market, in the marketplace of ideas, but especially in the free market. And that's why business groups are major players in Texas politics, and they provide the most in campaign contributions, and they hire the most lobbyists, and they put the most resources into steering political processes in a way that's beneficial for them. I mean, that's normal, like, interest groups and lobbying. But the point is that business groups are the major players in Texas politics. Now, the last defining factor, and this is another one where I feel like the book is honestly kind of throwing shade a little bit. There's a term called provincialism, which is a narrow, limited, and self-interested view of the world that is often associated with rural values and notions of limited government. I will ask you to, define provincialism on the exam, because that's an important concept, and it is indeed a real concept. But I don't personally love the way the book describes Texas. Like, I think so. I think what they call provincialism, I think Texans call it, we do things our way here, and it doesn't necessarily correlate with rural. I think there's just a Texan culture that's like, you know what? No, that's fine. You do you, but I'm gonna do me. And if that's narrow and limited, maybe it comes across that way in many instances, and I'm sure in many instances it is. But Texans we want to do it our own way. We don't really need anybody to tell us what to do. We've got it. That's kind of the mentality. So honestly, I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on that. If you want to, like, maybe I'll put up like a discussion thing, and have y'all's thoughts. That's just my remarks on that. But I mean, it is an important concept. So essentially, to wrap up this section, the book defines Texas political culture as traditionalistic and individualistic, in the sense that we keep with tradition, with being a healthy red state, and their definition of provincialism, my definition is just like Texas, man. It's just Texas. And then lastly, business dominance. That relates to individualistic because we as Texans use the government and use the free market in ways to advance our own economic interests, and we should have the freedom to do so. Cool, guys. So that was my short video lecture. Just to hammer home some main points, I need you to know what political culture is. I need you to know why, or just I need you to understand why liberty, equality, and democracy are so central. But I want you to also know how liberty, equality, and democracy are not monolithic. There are different. It means different things to different people. There are different aspects of it. I need you to understand that. And then I need you to understand why Texas is an individualistic / traditionalistic, has that kind of political culture. And I would like you to know why it's not moralistic. You need to know what moralistic means as well. But basically, to wrap up, you need to know those different types of political cultures, and then I need you to know the common central themes, which are, again, liberty, equality, and democracy. Lastly, I need you to do your political compass, because all of these political values that we've talked about will come to the surface because the questions are designed to elicit responses based on those attitudes. So I need you to do the political compass, and we will talk about it next week. Cool. Thanks, guys.